the best-selling cars and the absolute worst-selling cars that they couldn't give away in Q3 of 2025. Came across an article here by Car and Driver, and some of these are not a shocker, but hey, you know what? If you're probably thinking about buying a car, you've got to remember, if you're buying one that's on the biggest winners list, you're probably going to overpay. You know, these dealers, they play that game. They want us to tell you it's the most popular vehicle, and if it actually is and it's based on numbers, there's a good possibility they stand by that. So you probably won't get a great deal on it, but there's some of the biggest losers in this list too in Q3 of 25, and some of these will actually surprise you. So let's break this down, and I'm going to dive right into one of the biggest winners, of course, are EVs. Why is the winners of EVs? Well, because there was a mad dash to the finish line. We know with the federal tax credit of $7,500 was a lot of money, especially when average EVs are around $58,000, $60,000, and you knock almost $8,000 off the top. That's a pretty sizable chunk. And if somebody's on the fence looking for a new car anyway, there was an effort to obviously buy EVs. Now, that being said, with the $7,500 tax credit going bye-bye here at the end of, what was it, September or whatever it was, there was a strong push for people to get out there. Hyundai Ioniq 5 sold more units in the past 3 months than it did in the first 6 months of 24. Ioniq 6 saw a 29% increase. The Ford Mustang Mach-E even jumped 51%, if you could believe that. And the F-150 Lightning was up 40%. Now, some of these are incentivized. EVs have always been incentivized. And clearly what we're seeing is a massive drop. Ever since they turned the lights off on these EV subsidies, now you're seeing it literally fall off a cliff. They've already shown in a short period of time that they went from about 13% of the market share of new cars being purchased down to about 5%, roughly. These are rough numbers I came across. The Equinox sold about 25,000. That's a 157% increase. So, I mean, the obvious is people were buying EVs, not because they love them with all of their the soul-crushing passion, but because, well, they were probably out shopping anyway, and they saw this as an opportunity to get a deal, and the government was pitching in. So, anyway, you know, a lot of those vehicles sold well. The Audi's Q6 e-tron, they moved 10,000 units, and Volkswagen ID4, 12,470 units, represent a 176% increase. Now, it's pretty obvious the EV sold. Other big sellers were large Hyundai SUVs. Vehicles, for example, like Santa Fe and the Palisade. We're looking second generation model was up about 27% in Q3 with about 35,600 units. The tiny little Venue saw a 28% increase, but again, a lot of these vehicles, large, medium, and small SUVs by Hyundai. I mean, a lot of people are starting to lean that way. They're getting tired of hearing all the problems over at Toyota Land and, you know, General Motors with some of their V8 engines. They've had all kinds of problems. So now people are starting to look at products like Hyundai and Kia that, interestingly enough, many people wouldn't even take one if you would give it to them at one point. But you know what? They're selling. They're selling like hotcakes, and sales were up. Other big winners were vehicles like the Ford Expedition. Had an absolute crazy year. 48% jump in Q3 to about 21,844 in the Tremor model. And obviously, even the Bronco, which received some minor updates, some small little changes since it came out in 21, saw some sales rise 41%. You know, pushing past that 37,000 unit sold number. So obviously the Broncos, the Expeditions, they're sort of all-terrain SUVs are selling well. So were some changes with Chevy SUVs. Chevy did some sales there too. The gas-powered Equinox saw almost 100% increase. Wow. Moving 73,000 and some units, while the Traverse went up about 37%. And the Tahoe and Suburban saw their Q3 sales jump about 10% and about 40% respectively for the Suburban. So a lot of the GMC products sold too. Hey man, it was summertime. People were buying products, and I mean, let's face it, you know, people are getting back on the saddle again. Another big winner, and this one should not be a big surprise for you. Not a shocker, Nissan. Well, we know Nissan, you know, on the one hand, we know their sales weren't amazing. But on the other hand, their sales were actually reasonable, but they were incentivizing everything. See, that's where the caveat was. And we've said this in the past over and over again, that they were building up a lot of inventory, but they were also pushing really hard with their marketing efforts and their marketing dollars. And that's what it went to actually, unfortunately, hurt their bottom line. They were taking all their profits and putting it into marketing, but they sold a lot of vehicles. Their Kicks rose about 37%. The Rogue went up about 9%. The Murano had a solid quarter with 14,000 and change. The three-road Pathfinder also went up about 33%, and they moved almost 26,000 units. The Armada saw about a 24% increase. And the electric Area, which again saw a 42%. Well, actually, it didn't do all that well, but considering that all the other EVs are doing well, the Area kind of fell flat on its face there. Now, some of the biggest gimbals here, and I would say the biggest losers, and I don't care what time of the year it is, I don't care what kind of incentives you're throwing away, there's nobody forcing me to buy a Buick. But Buicks used to be, for the gray hairs like this, but now they're, of course, trying to market to a younger buyer, but nobody's looking at these Buicks. I don't know. I mean, their small SUVs look like everything else, but it's still more of the GM, the same old GM products. A Buick Enclave, built in Michigan, sales up to 60% in Q3, so not a great move there. Improved to 50% higher than in 24, but unfortunately, the import Buicks. So they saw some of the domestic products, like in Michigan, selling well, like the Enclave. But the Encore GX, which is something that's built in South Korea, actually saw a 38% drop, as is the Envision, which is built in China also. So the import versions of the Buicks did not sell well. And I don't know, I wouldn't buy any of them myself. I'm just not too excited about any of the products. They're not all that well made, if we're being quite honest, in my own personal opinion, of course. Preliminary agreement to reduce the rate to 15% as stalled. Korean imports continue to hit with the 25% tax. So, see, this is part of the issue. We're talking tariffs, and the tariffs and taxes are having an impact in a lot of ways. And in this case, this is a different type of tariff, but the same taxation applies, and those are having an impact. Another big loser is a Chevy Corvette. I mean, we see thousands across the nation. They went from one of the hottest topic products to absolutely nobody wants them. Every car lot that I've driven through selling Corvettes usually has 20, 30, 40 Corvettes on the car lot for sale. Nobody's buying them. Okay, so how bad is it? Sales cratered in the third quarter, down 34% to about 5,100 units, bringing the yearly total to about 17,700 and change. That's 31% less than they managed in the first 3 quarters last year. So they're down. It's a big hit. It's possible some buyers are waiting for the new model. Of course, there's going to be some updates for the 26 model year. Not drastic, but the interior is going to be tweaked a little bit. We've seen that already starting to happen. Some people are getting excited about that. And that whole center section, they plan to turf that. So there could be just some of those people who are like, okay, the C8's been around now for a bit. Let's wait to see what else is fresh. A lot of people are just waiting for the refresh, but either way, they're not selling that well. Another one of the biggest losers are Volkswagens, the cars. The Jetta sedan, the Golf GTI, and the Golf R are Q3 week results. They weren't that great. Let's just be honest. So in terms of volume, the Jetta, it only moved about 11,000 and some odd units, down about 42%. 42% drop since Q3 of last year. The GTI is a more niche product at 1,931 units, also down by 42%. The Golf R dropped 5% to just over 1,000 units sold. Ouch. While the GTI and Golf R's skids could be the result of the changeover, let's be honest. Volkswagen's had some real struggles. The quality problems, the challenges. Over on Exotic Car Playplace, I'll share you a link over there. I'm doing a lot of big features here. Actually, tomorrow, there's going to be a big talk about the only Volkswagens I would personally buy. And you're going to want to check that out over Exotic Car Playplace. I'll link that at the very end. But again, you're going to want to check that out. Head on over to the channel. But Volkswagens are not selling well. A lot of it's the quality problems. A lot of it's still the trust issues from Dieselgate. A lot of it's just lacking in innovation. And honestly, I mean, the association with, the Porsche and Audi brands being overpriced and Volkswagen getting a little bit overzealous in selling some electric vehicles, people are just losing interest. Other big-ish gimps, I guess, on the market would be the large Audi SUVs. For example, the Q8 down about 22%. The Q7, not amazing. But really, a lot of these European imports are not selling all that well. Another loser, Alfa Romeo. Stelvio SUV managed to sell 375 units. That's 25% decrease year over year. The Tonale is down about 15% as well in Q3 of 25. And they're also working on a new generation of the Stelvio, so that should be exciting for those that want to get into an Alfa Romeo. I think Alfa is a nice little option. I know a lot of you may not totally agree with that, but let's be honest. Look what Mercedes is putting out these days. Let's be honest. What's Audi putting out these days? What's Volkswagen putting out these days? So Alfa is a little bit of a breath of fresh air. And the reliability, actually, from my experience, is really no worse than a modern-day BMW. So really, the only hiccup there was the Alfa is the fact that the service network is a little further spread out, and it's kind of harder to get your car looked after and maintained. So those are kind of the biggest winners, the biggest losers of Q3 of 2025. And hey, if you're looking at buying any of those, just remember, some of the biggest losers, you'll be able to go in there and just slash and hack and slash and negotiate your way down. Remember, don't settle for sticker price. Go down somewhere between 5 to 8% below MSRP, below Monroney sticker, below sticker price. Try to target that area and try to get some things thrown in. Also, don't go in there less than paying, at least 25% down. Don't go over 4 years. And try as well to keep your monthly payments, way down there. You want to keep it manageable. A lot of people are getting into trouble. You don't want to be overloaded, and you certainly don't want negative equity, so don't take out that loan for 7 or 8 years. You don't want to be in a bad spot. As well, don't bother buying the extras at the dealer, like Gap, paint protection film. Look at your third-party shops instead. They'll hook you up, and they'll probably do it a better deal. Anyway, hope to see each and every one of you real soon. See you then. Bye-bye.